In 1924, an anatomist named Raymond Dart received a crate of fossils at his office in Johannesburg. He was in the middle of getting dressed for a friend's wedding when he opened it. Inside was the skull of a child, an early human ancestor, roughly 3 years old. He spent the next 73 days cleaning it by hand, using one of his wife's knitting needles to remove the rock. When he finally saw the full skull, he found 2 clean holes punched through the eye sockets. Perfectly round, perfectly spaced. He pressed his own fingers into them to confirm what he already knew. The spacing matched the lower canines of a leopard. This child had been prey, and what Dart was holding in his hands was not just a fossil. It was a record of the world your ancestors were born into, a world that had been trying to eat them for 2 million years. You see, the Africa that early humans emerged from was not a single threat. It was a layered system of predators that had spent millions of years refining themselves to hunt large mammals, which is exactly what we were. At the top of that system sat the cave lion, larger than any lion alive today, hunting in coordinated groups across open savanna and woodland. Below it, Smilodon fatalis, the saber-toothed cat, 600 pounds with 11-inch canines, built for a single function. It waited near water sources, the places humans could not avoid, and ambushed at 30 miles per hour. The strike went to the throat. Death came in seconds. Cave hyenas hunted in packs of 20 or more with a bite force of 1,100 pounds per square inch, strong enough to crack open the femur of an elephant to get at the marrow inside. They hunted at night in coordinated groups, and they were relentless. Dire wolves ran in packs of 30. When humans began migrating out of Africa into Eurasia, the predator roster expanded. In Europe, cave bears the size of modern grizzlies. In the Americas, Arctodus simus, the short-faced bear, 2,000 pounds, 12 feet tall when standing, built for endurance running at 40 miles per hour. In South America, terror birds, 10 feet tall, beaks that could shatter a skull on impact. These were animals that had never encountered a human being before. Everywhere early humans arrived, they walked into ecosystems that had no behavioral template for what we were. Our vision in the dark was poor. Our sense of smell was negligible. We were upright, which made us visible from a distance across open ground. Our infants could not walk for a year. By every biological measure, the outcome was already written, except it wasn't. For most of the first 2 million years, the standard response to a predator feeding on a carcass was to leave. You waited at a distance until the hyenas finished, until the lions moved off, until nothing remained worth fighting over. Then you approached and took the scraps, bones with marrow, skin, whatever was left. Around 2 million years ago, that calculation changed. Paleoanthropologist Henry Bunn at the University of Wisconsin spent years studying cut marks on animal bones recovered from Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. The marks told a story about sequence, which tool hit the bone first, the stone blade or the carnivore tooth. What Bunn found, published in 2012, was that hominins were reaching the meatiest central portions of large carcasses before the carnivores finished. They were not waiting. They were walking in while the predators were still present and taking the kill. Bunn called it confrontational scavenging, a group of early hominins moving together, throwing rocks, making sustained noise, walking directly toward a pack of feeding hyenas. The hyenas had 3 options: fight, flee, or hold their ground. Most fled. A pack of 20 hyenas outweighs a group of early humans by a wide margin and carries weapons in its jaw that humans cannot match. But hyenas, like every predator, run a continuous cost-benefit calculation. A meal is worth a fight with 1 animal. It is not worth a fight with 12 screaming animals throwing rocks. What this behavior required is worth sitting with. Confrontational scavenging is not instinct. It requires reading a predator's body language, calculating group size against threat level, communicating a shared intention, and committing to an approach that every survival instinct is screaming to abandon. The hominins doing this were solving a coordination problem and a threat assessment problem simultaneously, in real time. That cognitive demand left marks on the brain over generations. And it worked until the sun went down. Before fire, the night was the most dangerous part of the day. Cave hyenas hunted in darkness. Leopards moved at dusk and dawn. Saber-tooths waited near water at sunset. Early humans had poor night vision, no natural weapons, and no way to detect a predator approaching from downwind in total darkness. When the sun went down, you found a tree, climbed into it, held still, and hoped. That was the entire strategy. Inside Wonderwork Cave in South Africa's Northern Cape, archaeologist Francesco Berna and his team found something in 2012 that pushed fire's history back further than most researchers expected. Burnt bone fragments and plant ash, layered in the sediment, dating to 1 million years ago. Early hominins were maintaining fire inside a sheltered space, feeding it, keeping it alive across repeated visits spanning vast stretches of time. A campfire creates a perimeter of roughly 30 feet that apex predators will not cross. The aversion is hardwired. Even modern African lions, habituated to human presence across decades of safari tourism, will not walk through fire. For early humans huddled inside that circle of light, the equation shifted completely. The darkness that had been a death sentence became survivable, but fire did something beyond the physical barrier. In 2017, anthropologist David Sampson at the University of Toronto published research on sleep patterns among the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last hunter-gatherer populations still living in the landscape their ancestors occupied. Using wrist monitors across 33 individuals over 20 days, he found something remarkable. There was almost no moment during any given night when the entire group was in deep sleep simultaneously. Different sleep chronotypes, early risers, night owls, elderly members who sleep shallowly, created a naturally rotating watch. Sampson called it sentinel sleep. Someone was always awake. Someone was always tending the fire. The hours that cave hyenas specifically exploited had a conscious human presence inside them. The night had been solved, but surviving darkness was only half the problem. The daylight hours had their own killing ground. In the early 2000s, evolutionary biologist Daniel Lieberman at Harvard began documenting a hunting practice among the San people of the Kalahari that had been largely dismissed as inefficient: persistence hunting. Tracking researcher Louis Liebenberg ran alongside San hunters and recorded one kudu pursuit across 8 kilometers of open terrain in 42-degree heat. The animal was found standing motionless, unable to move. Core temperature spiked past the point of function. The hunter made the kill from 2 feet away after less than 2 hours of pursuit. The biology behind this is specific. Humans carry between 2 and 4 million eccrine sweat glands distributed across the entire body surface. Most mammals have sweat glands only on their paws and cool themselves by panting, which requires slowing down or stopping. A running quadruped that cannot pant is accumulating heat with no release. A running human is shedding heat continuously through the skin at full speed. The saber-tooth that covered 30 miles per hour in 3 seconds could not sustain that pace across an hour of open ground pursuit without overheating. The human jogging steadily behind it could. Lieberman's fieldwork placed this in a broader argument published in 2004 in the journal Nature, co-authored with Dennis Bramble. Their analysis of the human skeleton found evidence that the entire body had been shaped by selection pressure for distance running, the Achilles tendon as an energy return spring, the enlarged gluteus maximus for stability at speed, the nuchal ligament stabilizing the head during a run. These are not features shared by our closest primate relatives. They are features built specifically for the kind of long, sustained, ground-covering movement that turns a faster animal into a dead one, given enough time and sun. The animal that looked weakest in a direct confrontation turned out to be the most dangerous thing alive on a hot afternoon. Then, in 1957, archaeologist Ralph Selecki was excavating Shanidar Cave in the Zagros Mountains of northern Iraq when he found a skeleton buried in the sediment. It belonged to a Neanderthal male. Researchers designated him Shanidar 1. When they finished the analysis, what they were looking at stopped the conversation about Neanderthal cognition for decades. Shanidar 1 had a healed fracture in his right arm so severe that the forearm had almost certainly been amputated below the elbow, either by injury or deliberate intervention. His left eye socket showed evidence of a blow that had likely left him blind in that eye, possibly from birth. He had severe degenerative arthritis across his spine, right knee and right ankle. He was somewhere between 40 and 50 years old at death, elderly by Neanderthal standards, when most individuals died in their 20s and 30s. He could not have hunted. He could not have fought. He could not have contributed meaningfully to the physical survival of the group, and yet someone had cared for him, fed him, kept him alive through injuries that would have killed him if left alone for years. In 2001, a separate discovery at Dmanisi in Georgia, the oldest human fossils found outside Africa, dating to 1.77 million years ago, produced a skull belonging to an adult who had lost every single tooth years before death, every socket fully resorbed, unable to process raw food for years. Someone was feeding them, 2 individuals, separated by over 1 million years and thousands of miles, both surviving on care their bodies could no longer earn. No predator in the Pleistocene operated this way. A wolf with a broken leg is abandoned. A lion that cannot hunt is left behind. Keeping these individuals alive was the most sophisticated survival strategy in the fossil record. The toothless elder remembered where water was during the last drought. Shanidar 1 had been reading these landscapes for 40 years before his arm gave out. The knowledge inside those bodies was worth more than the food they consumed, and eventually, that accumulated knowledge produced something the predators had never encountered before. In 1995, coal miners excavating a site near Schöningen in northern Germany broke through into a layer of peat and found bones. 27 horses, butchered and stacked, surrounded by 8 wooden spears. The spears were intact, preserved in the waterlogged sediment for 300,000 years. The longest was 2.5 meters. Each had been carved from the base of a young spruce tree, the densest, hardest part, and tapered to a point. When researchers measured the balance point of each spear, everyone sat 1/3 from the tip, exactly where the center of gravity sits on a modern javelin, optimized for distance throwing. You see, a throwing spear changes every calculation in an encounter with a large predator. It turns a close-range confrontation, the kind where size and strength determine the outcome, into a ranged engagement where speed of thought and accuracy determine it. A cave lion charging a group of humans armed with throwing spears absorbs serious injury before it closes the distance. Over generations, the lions that attacked human groups died faster than the the ones that avoided them. The behavior selected for was avoidance. The animals that once managed human populations as prey items were quietly learning to treat them as something to be left alone. The pattern shows up on every continent, and it follows the same shape every time. Humans arrive. Within a few thousand years, the large animals are gone. In Australia, roughly 50,000 years ago, the continent held the most diverse megafauna assemblage on Earth. Giant wombats, marsupial lions, a monitor lizard 8 meters long. In North America, human arrival around 15,000 years ago preceded the extinction of 34 of 45 genera of large mammals within 2,000 years. The mechanism was not complicated. Animals that had never encountered a coordinated, tool-using, language-capable predator had no learned fear of one. They did not run. They did not adapt quickly enough. They died. The cave lion that hunted in groups across Eurasia for hundreds of thousands of years went extinct approximately 14,000 years ago. Smilodon, last recorded in the fossil record around 10,000 years ago. The short-faced bear, 11,000 years ago. The dire wolf, 9,500 years ago. Each one gone inside the same narrow window. The window that opened when humans showed up on their continent with spears and a plan and 2 million years of compounded knowledge about how predators move, where they drink, and how to kill them before they kill you. The child in Dart's fossil crate, the one with the leopard punctures through her eye sockets, lived at the bottom of that food chain. The species she belonged to ended up at the top of it. The distance between those 2 points is the entire human story.